Tina sat on the couch, her fingers tapping impatiently on the armrest. The tension in the room was palpable. Her husband David paced back and forth in the dimly lit living room, worry etched across his face. Tina couldn't blame him. Dealing with his parents had always been a challenge, but things had taken a turn for the worse since the birth of their son. Tina looked at her husband, sympathy filling her eyes.
I don't think I've ever heard the words, "I'm sorry," out of any of their mouths in the 12 years I've known them.
You're right. They never admit when they're wrong. It's always someone else's fault.
Your father is so nasty and aggressive, and your mother, she's conniving and manipulative. They're both narcissistic.
I know, Tina, I've tried to distance myself from them, but it's not that easy. They're my parents, and I can't just cut them out of my life completely.
Your father has said some truly awful things, David. It's like when he told me, "I don't like children, or don't expect me to like your child if you have one." And then he flipped when we told them I'm pregnant. The first thing he said to me was, "If you ever keep that baby from me because you're mad at me, I'll hit you right in the face." Insanity.
I confronted him about that, Tina. I told him he couldn't talk to you that way, but it's like he's incapable of seeing his own fault.
I told you from the start that they wouldn't respect me as our son's mother. They probably just consider me a vessel for their grandchild.
Ever since son was born, they've been acting even nuttier. They got 16 diapers for baby shower that friends paid for, and then they got themselves an entire nursery worth of stuff for son, only for their house. They gloated about all the nice things they had.
Your parents have never respected our boundaries, David. They show up unannounced and uninvited. It's like they think they can do whatever they want.
I know, Tina, and it's not right. I've been trying to set boundaries with them, but they just won't listen.
Your father called both of us today and asked me to have you call him. When I called him back, he wouldn't even speak to me. He only wanted to talk to you. And then he accused us of keeping our son from them. He insisted on setting up some sort of visitation rights with your mother, aunt, and uncle. It's lunatic behavior.
I'll talk to him. Tina, I'll make it clear that this is our family and we need our space.
Your dad hung up on me after I told him I was suffering from postpartum depression and that we were trying to get our son on a schedule. He then texted me, "Leave me alone." No joke. I can't take their craziness anymore.
Tina, I'll support you every step of the way. We need to protect our family.
The following weeks were a whirlwind emotions for Tina and David. They had decided to take a step back from David's parents, hoping that some distance would help his mother and father understand the need for boundaries. But as time passed, it became clear that this strategy wasn't working. The messages and calls from David's parents continued, each one more frantic and demanding than the last. One as Tina was rocking their son to sleep. The doorbell rang. She tensed, heart pounding in her chest. She hadn't expected any visitors. David, who had been working in the home office, stepped out into the hallway.
Who is it?
I don't know. I didn't hear a car pull up.
The doorbell rang again, more impatiently this time, and David sighed before walking to the front door. Tina carefully placed their sleeping son in his crib, her mind racing with anxiety. David opened the door cautiously, and Tina heard a gasp from the hallway. It was David's mother, Martha, standing on the doorstep, her eyes red and puffy, her voice trembling.
"David, I've been so worried. I thought something terrible had happened to you."
Mom, we've talked about this. You can't just show up unannounced like this. We need space.
"I was so scared, David. You weren't answering our calls, and you know how your father gets. He was convinced something had happened to you."
David's father, Henry, appeared behind Martha, his face a mix of concern and anger.
"David, we need to see our grandson. We have a right to be a part of his life."
Tina stepped into the hallway, her voice firm.
No, you don't. You lost that right with your behavior.
David stepped between his parents and Tina, his voice stern.
Mom, Dad, we need boundaries. We can't have you barging into our lives whenever you feel like it.
"David, please let us see our grandson. We miss him so much."
Tina felt a surge of frustration. She had been dealing with David's parents for years, and she knew their tactics well. They would play the victim, use guilt as a weapon, and try to manipulate their way into getting what they wanted.
No, Mum, we need time. We need to figure things out as a family.
Henry, say something. Our family is falling apart.
David, you've changed. Ever since you married Tina, you've become distant. She's turning you against us.
I haven't turned him against anyone. He's a grown man who can make his own decisions.
Mom, Dad, we need you to leave. We'll talk when we're ready, but this is not the time.
Martha and Henry exchanged a glance, their faces a mixture of disappointment and anger. Reluctantly, they turned and walked away, but Tina knew it wouldn't be the end of it. As the door closed behind David's parents, Tina let out a shaky breath. She turned to her husband, her eyes filled with worry.
David, do you think they'll ever understand?
I don't know, Tina.
I just hope they realize that we're doing this to protect our son.
They may not see it now, but hopefully one day they will.
Little did they know that the turmoil caused by David's parents was far from over. Tina and David would soon face more challenges and unexpected twists in their battle to protect their family and maintain their sanity in the face of their crazy in-laws. One evening, as Tina was putting their son to bed, David entered the room with a solemn expression on his face. Tina looked up at him, concern etched across her features.
What's wrong, David?
Tina, my parents won't stop. They keep trying to find ways to see our son, even though we've made it clear that we need space.
What did they do this time?
They called social services. Tina, they accused us of neglecting our son by keeping them away from him.
You're kidding, right? They can't possibly think that's true.
I wish I were kidding. They're desperate, Tina, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to force their way into our lives.
David, we can't let them tear our family apart. We need to fight back.
I know, Tina, we'll get through this together.
The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal battles and emotional turmoil. Tia and David hired an attorney to help them navigate the accusations made by David's parents. Social services conducted an investigation and found no evidence of neglect or wrongdoing on their part. Still, the situation was far from resolved. One evening, as Tina and David were sitting in their lawyer's office, going over the latest developments in their case, their attorney looked at them with concern.
We need to be prepared for a long legal battle.
I won't let them manipulate their way into our son's life. He deserves better than that.
The legal battle continued, with David's parents refusing to back down. They continued to make false accusations and spread lies about Tina and David to anyone who would listen. It was a trying time for the young family, but their determination to protect their son never wavered. One day, as Tina was checking her email, she came across a message from an unfamiliar address. She opened it, and her heart sank. She read the words on the screen. It was an anonymous message, threatening to expose their family's personal information if they didn't give in to David's parents' demands.
Tina, what's wrong?
She turned the laptop screen toward him, and he read the threatening message. Anger boiled within, and he clenched his fists.
They're resorting to blackmail now. This has gone too far.
Their attorney advised them to report the threat to the authorities, and an investigation was launched to trace the source of the message. But David and Tina knew that the threats were just another tactic to break their resolve. One evening, as the sun was setting, David's parents showed up unannounced at their doorstep once again. Tina and David exchanged wary glances before opening the door. Martha and Henry stood there, their faces filled with determination. Henry spoke first, his voice dripping with false concern.
David, Tina, we need to see our grandson. We're worried about him.
We've been through this, Mom. We need space, and you need to respect our boundaries.
David, please let us see our grandson. We miss him so much.
This is our family, Mom, Dad. We've done everything we can to protect our son from your drama and manipulation. We won't back down.
Martha and Henry exchanged a glance, their faces a mixture of disappointment and anger. But this time, something was different. They seemed to finally realize that Tina and David were not going to yield to their demands. With one last, long, hard look, David's parents turned and walked away. Tina and David watched them go, their hearts heavy with the weight of the battle they had fought to protect their family. As the door closed behind them, David turned to Tina, his eyes filled with gratitude and love.
Tina, we did it. We stood our ground, and they finally backed down.